Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today I'm going to show you guys how to mix beats using FL Studio stock plugins. You guys will get the project files for free. So we're going to start from scratch. And this is a track we did for Travis Scott style some time ago. So the first thing I do when mixing is I group the sounds and then I quickly level the groups. So the first technique I'm going to do here is go to our channel rack, switch this to all, double click all of my sounds and hit Control L. This will send everything to the mixer and it will give it a number. If you don't see those numbers, hit Alt M on the left side. And that way you guys can see which mixer channel that sound is routed to. Let's go to the mixer. Now, normally it will like auto name stuff for you. Because I was kind of working quickly here, I'm just going to highlight these. You could hit Control, left click to highlight, right click, hit E, and then reset. So that's how you reset all your like effects and faders and everything. So what we'll do is we'll reroute everything. So we're going to double click, hit Control L. So now all those sounds will be named in the mixer and now they have a name. Okay, so now we're going to sort these sounds. So to move sounds around, hit Alt left and Alt right on your keyboard to move stuff around in the mixer. And then once I have all the sounds near each other, like melodies, bass, drums, vocals, once I have those groups, then I will create a group. So firstly, let me start separating these sounds. I can kind of read off the name of the thing to know what it is, so it's easier. So again, I'm just hitting Alt left to move stuff around. Some stuff isn't named, so I don't think track 18 is used. So let's right click, let's call that melody. So that's my first group called melody. Now I think there's a faster way, but let's just make that melody. I think we can also hit Control, left click, highlight, right click, and create a group. And let's call this melody. Now, I'm pretty sure this creates another thing. So you see how it grouped everything into this selection here. The only thing is it renames the track that you're on. That's kind of weird, but so number 4 was not the melody. That was actually our Topline 4. So that's why I said it's a little weird, the FL Studio grouping function. It's kind of weird. So anyhow, I'm just going to fix this and we're going to move that around. So now we're going to highlight all these sounds. Just hit Control, left click to highlight all these, right click to route all those tracks to this melody track. So all my melodies will show up on this one fader. And what we could do is start turning stuff down as a whole or pull it back up. So I'm going to do this for other groups like our drums. Let's figure out all our drums here. I wish there was a quicker way to add a mixer channel in the mixer. There probably is a shortcut, but I don't know the shortcut. So on channel 20 here, we have an empty one. Let's call that drums. Let's make it blue. Just general basic colors, blue, red, green, yellow. We're gonna hit Alt to the left this time. Now the separator needs to be on the left side of something. So basically we need to add a separator on the left side of the drums. It's very awkward. They'll fix the mixer. It's just a little awkward to group stuff compared to Pro Tools. Okay, so now we have the drums. We're gonna highlight all these. So I'm hitting Control, highlight, right click, route to this track only. So now all the drums are going to one channel. So if I want to quickly turn the melodies and drums down, I could just use the fader like this. And the first step in like mixing is creating your dynamic range. What is dynamic range? It's the difference between the loud stuff and the quiet stuff. So if everything's trying to be loud, there's no like movement in the track. So to create movement, I turn stuff down. So sometimes the melody gets turned down so that, excuse me, the drums can be the pointy part and the melody stuff can be like pushed to the back. Okay, so let's figure out these other tracks. Some other kind of scraggling tracks. So I think Topline is going to be a melody of some sort. It's very important to also name your stuff. So this is why it's important. So now I'm going to add these two to the melody group and then right click, route to this track. So the first step in mixing is actually like no plugins. It's counterintuitive. It's organization, funny enough. So it has nothing to do with plugins and mixing all this stuff. It just means like, can you quickly make changes where you need to make changes? Okay, so notice instead of moving the individual faders, I'm moving the group fader. Okay, because I want everything to come down relatively to keep the same balance I had when making the beat. Okay, so we have the drums. Let's label these blue. So again, this is the boring stuff, but again, nobody's gonna tell you this because they edit out everything. Okay, so here's the blue part. And now we need to add a separator there. And let's create a new group. Let's call this bass. Now we're missing vocals on this one because I didn't do vocals. So the only kind of group that we're not covering today is vocals. So we're gonna highlight all these and we're gonna assume these are all bass takes from the way I labeled these. Let's make this like red. And then right click, route to that track only. So now all the bass goes to this one channel called bass. Okay, so now we can quickly adjust. So now your mix went from what, 38 tracks to 3 tracks. It's like, how hard is it to mix 3 tracks? Okay, so unless you need to specifically go in to fix something very specific, you know, then you go microscopic. But this is how we kind of simplify 150 track mixes, you know, 50 track mixes. We just group the stuff. So now we're dealing with 3 to 4 tracks. It makes it a lot more simple on the mind. Okay, let's make sure everything's accounted for. So another thing I'll do is I'll mute the groups to make sure that everything's grouped properly. So let's mute the melody. And if I hear anything melodic, that means I didn't group something. Okay, so everything seems routed, right? So the first thing I'm gonna do for the video's sake is add a soft clipper. This is not mandatory. This is only for kind of perceiving my mix. I'm gonna add a fruity soft clipper threshold to the right. Now you have to determine the type of soft clipping you're going for. This is more hard clipping, turning the threshold to the right. If you want true soft clipping, you're gonna turn this to the left. This will give you a more compressed sound, but a more rounded sound, which can lose some of the impact. So for now, we're just gonna leave it on the hard mode. Now to kind of prepare my ear, we're gonna open up a parametric EQ2 and we're gonna turn up the gain going into the soft clipper. So now the beat's gonna sound louder simply by turning the volume up. Okay, so now we're not gonna overcompensate with plugins. Okay, so the first thing I need to fix is you guys can see this fader's turned down even though the rest of the drums aren't. This is our kick. So in the mix, I didn't want this turned up because it would have clipped. So now that we have the soft clipper, we could turn our kick back up. Now this kick to begin with wasn't the hardest kick in the world. So let's add a fruity soft clipper directly to our kick. We're gonna turn it to the right and manage the levels directly on here. So I'm gonna use a parametric EQ2 and on the left side, they have a gain knob. We're gonna turn the stuff up or down with this gain knob. So this fader, I know I'm kind of jumping around, but this fader in the mixer, this is after all of your effects. So we wanna control the volume before all of the effects. And so I'm just using this EQ so that if I add more plugins, it won't be like blowing out the speaker. And now I have to ask myself, okay, what's the bass relationship? Does the kick muddy up the bass when it hits? So the first thing I'll check, you guys can click this button here. It says View Volume Stereo Properties. And we're gonna flip the phase of our kick just to see if we get the kick to punch a little bit more. It sounds worse when you flip the polarity, which means there is some overlap between the kick and the bass. So what I will do is add a parametric. This is advanced. I'm just warning you guys, this is advanced. So we're gonna open up Fruity Parametric EQ2. And what I want to do is chisel out everything below, let's say 100 Hertz. Every time the kick hits, we're just gonna take care of all the low end so that there's like no clashing. So I'm gonna mark this number 1 and we're gonna keep that like that for now. We're gonna find our kick, which is on track 25. Let's open up a Fruity Peak Controller. And let's go to, we're gonna turn the volume to 0 so it doesn't do anything. Actually, let's turn the volume to the left. What this will do is every time the kick hits, it turns the volume down of something. Now we have to link this peak controller to something because right now it's not doing anything. Let's go to the bass. Let's go to Parametric EQ2. We're gonna right click on this, this fader, link this to controller. And I don't know why that's like a weird glitch right there. That was weird. So link to controller, and then we're gonna do peak control peak. So now every time the kick hits, it will respond to every time that kick hits. Let's hit accept. Okay, so depending on the settings that we have in the Fruity Peak controller, it will move that that specific knob. Let me see if I can pull these both up at the same time. Okay, so the bass level is where does this start? So as I move the bass level, because it's a bipolar value, 50% is centered, and anything above 50% is boosted, anything below is cut away. So it's because it's a bipolar, meaning bidirectional, we're gonna put that on 50%. So now I'm telling the volume to go lower every time that kick hits. So it's reading the impact of the kick, and it's telling this fader what to do. The better area to pick would be like, where does the kick actually clash with the bass? So what we could do is kind of quickly look at a parametric EQ too. And we can see these like vertical lines that are very dense. So here it reads 44 Hertz and 135 and 348. So that's a lot of random numbers. So it's 44, 135, or what was it? 130. Let's just say 130 and around 330. Okay, so somewhere around those frequencies. Now we can be particular, but this kick isn't boomy, so it's more punchy, which means that energy is usually going to be above 60 and 70 Hertz. It's going to be like an 80, 90, 100 range. So this kick isn't like an 808 where it's like boom. It's just like okay, and that kick energy is clashing with our bass. So it's not necessarily the low frequency. So let's fix this to be a bell curvature by left clicking this up here to make this a bell curvature. And let's move the frequency until it feels more natural where the kick is taking out volume. Now this feels more natural. And we have to tell it how far we want to take out the volume. So it looks like what, 50% down is 6 dB. Okay, so I'm just kind of roughly using numbers that you guys can copy. So about 50% shows -6 dB. That's the furthest I would take this. Usually I move in increments of 3 dB. To read the dB, I'm reading the parametric EQ fader right here, and it says -6 right here. So if I wanted half of that, I would go -25 Hertz, or -25%. And if I didn't want to take out this entire frequency range, I would narrow this bandwidth to be smaller. So now the kick and the 808 can coexist without completely dropping out the volume. Most people would add a fruity limiter to that and like sidechain the entire thing, but it takes out a lot of the character. I think we can get a lot more sizzle out of the kick too. Let's add a parametric, a fruity soft clipper at the end here, and let's add a fruity wave shaper. This is experimental, but we're going to crank up the curvature here with a convex curvature. Go to the settings, oversample this. We're going to do 4x, pull the mix level back, and then crank the pre. So now we're going to push the kick into saturation to add more harmonics. So now it has a little bit more high end than it did before. We have to ask which frequencies of the bass do we want enhanced and which frequencies of the kick do we want enhanced. So now let's add a parametric EQ too. The bass is like a high end part and has a low end part. So let's see which side sounds more exciting. 600 Hertz is that sound. I think that sounds good, but let's boost that like 60, which is the low end. I feel like we don't need that 60 Hertz to really experience this bass. So let's just boost to 600 and let's pull that up just a little bit. We're going to do increments of 1 dB in this case because we don't want to overkill. Another way we can make the bass stand out without, now this is advanced as well. Let's open up Patcher. The reason we want to open up Patcher is because we want to separate what's called the mid and side information. Let's right click. Let's add a plugin here. Let's add the Fruity Stereo Shaper. Okay, there's a preset in here. If you click in here, right click on these arrows, go to mixing, and we're going to do mid A side splitter. Basically, this number will correspond to the stereo. So it says 2. So what we need to do is right click to create an output audio, send number 2. So send number 2 goes to the stereo, and this one goes to mono. Okay, so let's say we want to clean up something on the stereo. Let's right click, let's add a plugin in here. Let's add the Fruity Parametric EQ2, and let's link these together. So now if I mute the mono signal, all we're hearing of the bass is the stereo. So I don't even know if the bass is stereo. That's interesting. It sounds wide. Okay, so let's widen the bass so that we have stereo. So let's add a Fruity Stereo enhancer. Let's do phase offset. And let me make sure I'm not doing something. Oh, I'm an idiot. Duh. It's because I muted the bass. Okay, so let's do that one more time. All right, so that's the full signal. Here's mono. Okay, so there is a subtle bit of side information, but it's very subtle. So instead of boosting the middle signal like we did with the first parametric EQ2, we're boosting everything. What we're going to do is boost the side signal so that the kick can hit in the center, and then the bass can have the detail on the side. So it creates a nice full image. And so again, the output number 2 is the stereo. So the stuff going downward in this patcher is stereo. Stuff that's up at the top is mono. So right now we're just hearing the sides. Let me crank it up so you guys can hear. So now I'm just going to boost that 600 frequency that we liked. And let's hear what this sounds like. I feel like we've added some kind of frequency. Feels super bassy. So this is weird. Soloing sounds, that bass feels way more low end heavy than when we put it in the mix. So it loses a lot of that rumble in the mix. So now I'm listening to the relationship of the bass and the kick. Just gonna exaggerate this boost. I think that sounds nice. I like that signal, so I might even turn down the mono and let that side kind of dominate on that bass. I didn't realize how loud that signal was. Oh, duh, I cranked it up, that's why. There we go. So let's say we wanted more information on the sides, we could add that Fruity Stereo enhancer. So now we have a lot more. If I mute the mono and solo, so to solo a group, hit Alt and then right click. You could solo the entire group. So now we can hear the more widened bass. So now we can have the low end do cool stuff, like the kick is hitting in the middle and then the sides is doing all the cool stuff. And that way they can coexist without clashing. I feel like this kick has frequencies I don't necessarily like, but we could sit here all day to try to get everything perfect about it. But let me see if I could chisel out the frequency I just don't like. It's like a boxy tone. I think it's the 300 hertz I don't like. And that 150 sounds bad. Okay, so now what I'm doing is this precision tone shaping. You guys don't need to memorize this. It's just this kick sample is not the greatest. So 150 times 2 is 300 hertz. That's probably where the harmonic is. It's a little bit better, but you know, it's the sample that matters. Okay. So let's turn all the effects off to see where we started. Here's with everything off. Let's turn it back on. I didn't realize that. There's so many little blunders I'm doing. I didn't realize we had that on side mode only with the bass. So let's pull this bass back down. Let's do this one more time. So here's with no effects. It's just like a bunch of sounds trying to cram into one space. Now let's turn the dimension back. All right, so now we have space for stuff to happen. Okay, so now we've handled the low end. Now let's start working on the drums as a whole. We don't need to do much with the drums here. Let's just kind of rely on our Fruity Soft Clipper technique. My new technique, now this can crush your drums if you push it too hard, but let's add the Fruity Wave Shaper before the Soft Clipper and add that convex curvature like that. Let's turn the mix level to about 50%, oversample on 4 times so there's no what they call aliasing or like ghost frequencies that shouldn't even be in there. And let's turn up the pre. So now we're just slamming the drums to create the harmonic glue so that the samples feel more together. Now these are already synthetic drums, so there's no need to like overly process. We're gonna pull the post level back so we're not just making stuff louder. I'm gonna push the drums until they fall apart and then pull it back. So I like the sound. I actually like it pushed a little bit harder. The only thing is that high end is very bright. So instead of adding an EQ, let's just go to the hi-hat and turn it down. So this is when we get microscopic with mixing individual sounds. So let's do it without. Here's before. The kick is a lot more punchy because when you start adding wave shapers and soft clippers, you square off the sound. And when you square off a sine wave, it becomes more harmonic, but you lose that boom. Okay, so we are losing a little bit of boom, but we're gaining a glue to the drums. So this is before. Let's turn it back on. Also, it's louder. Let's turn this down. So now I can feel that kick is a little buttery. So we're going to pull back some of this mixing, the mix level. Something happened here. I don't know what. It's like automation for the soft clipper. I don't know how that happened. That's weird. Why is that turning off? All right, so let's say you guys have some kind of ghost automation happening like this. It's turning on and off. I have no idea where. We can go to the browser, go to current project, go to, usually it's under patterns. I think they changed the name though. To, if we can't find it, then I'll just make another one. Okay, so there's a soft clipper mix level. I don't know what. Oh, it's the. How did that happen? I have no idea how that happened. We got Ghost in our FL Studio. So I turned off the modulation there. That was weird. So the last thing about the drums and the bass is that the kicks feel a little wide. Like this kick feels very wide. So what I'm going to do is, I'm trying to think of a stock plugin that lets us see the width of something. I think there's a plugin called Spreader, I want to say. Spreader. I think this will, okay, so what we're looking for here is, let me just kind of do this. Trying to think of another plugin, I guess Spreader. Let's use Spreader here. So I think Spreader can make stuff mono. So let's spread this to 0, which is mono. I think I'm doing that right. Or separation. Okay, I meant to do separation here. Let's just click the mono button. How about that? There we go. Okay, so I think that's reading the input value, not the output value. This is a little quirky because it's showing me stereo information even though I just clicked mono. Let me make sure I had the actual effect on. I don't think I had the effect on. Stand corrected. All right, this tool's a little quirky, y'all, for reading. I'm just gonna do it by ear. So as you guys can hear, this is a wide sound. That's wide. What I'm listening for is the opposite of that. I'm trying to hear if we've made it mono. So I'm just gonna do it with the stereo separation over here. Okay, so it's a sound that has a little bit of reverb in it, so it sounds like it's wide, but it's really an illusion. All right, so we can't really EQ out reverb on a kick. So this is the part where sound selection matters, basically. So I need to find frequencies that, even though it's gonna be a multiple set of frequencies, I need to find the frequencies that really make the room sound enhanced. So I'm gonna do a quick EQ sweep to figure out which frequencies are making it sound like it's from a room. I'd say 2K, 1K, 600, 200. So what we're gonna do is cut everything above, let's say let's do a low pass filter starting at about 600. So this is gonna dramatically change the tone because we're getting rid of what are called harmonics. And this is what makes the kick stand out in the mix. So I'm gonna get rid of everything above like 600. So now it's less of like a room feel. Okay, so let's do a before and after of the kick. Now I'm trying to do this fairly with the volume compensation. So let me think for a second. It's the only true way. There's no quick way. So here's before. Or excuse me, that's after. Here's before. You can really hear that room. Here's after. It feels a lot more controlled. And if we wanted to push the sound, we could run it through that soft clipper with the pre knob and just boost it more. But I don't think we need it to square off anymore. So I think we found the sweet spot for that kick. And again, that comes down to sound selection. But now the kick fits better in the mix. It's less like room sounding. And now the clashing area will change. So let's go back to our parametric EQ2, the one that was the dynamic. And let's move the frequency to the area where now there is clashing, which is the low end. All right, so we cleaned up those drums simply by getting rid of stuff that shouldn't have been there. Okay, the bass is pretty good. We could add some more harmonic content to the bass. I think the bass is fine though, because we're leveraging the side image. Also in Patcher, we can add limiters here. Let's right click on this node, insert a plugin here. Let's add Fruity Limiter. The reason we're doing Fruity Limiter is because I want to compress some of the side image so that it's not to lower the volume, but to keep it steady. Let's go to compressor. Actually, we could lower, let's try the limiter. Actually, let's do compressor mode. We're gonna lower that threshold. Also, this is a more visual compressor. Then we're gonna turn the ratio to probably 4:1, 8:1. So now we're shaving off some of the the nuanced side image and making it more consistent so the ear isn't too distracted. Now it feels very glidey on the sides as opposed to like rigid. Okay, so we've done everything we can with the drums and the bass. So again, let's do a before and after just to show people where we started. Here's before. just kind of hollow and not really doing much. Now let's do an after. Now, one of my secret favorite things to do is boost the mid frequencies or just the bass in general at 60 or 75 hertz. They're my two favorite frequencies. They shake the car. So these are like your feeling frequencies. This is where you feel that bass, okay, in the car. So again, 60 hertz is one secret frequency, or 75. It depends on where the bass kind of sits. So this one sits closer to 60. We're going to boost 60. And I just boosted until so I'm boosting like 5 dB right there. Now let's deal with this melody. So there's a lot of little things with the melody. In short, we're going to create another channel here. Let's call this like reverb. And on this reverb, we are going to send sounds here. Now this could be any set of sounds. This is just a universal reverb. But on this reverb, I think, you know, we said we're going to do FL stuff only. Let's do Fruity Reverb 2. We're going to do, we're going to right click, reset the wet level. So it's always on the reverb. Turn the dry level down. We're going to separate the sound to make it wider. Let's say about 70%. There's no set amount. Let's turn up the decay time to about 4 seconds or 5 seconds. Let's cut out the lows. You can read the values in the top left there. Cut out the lows at about 300 hertz because that's where most sounds have their fundamental frequency. It gets stacked up in the reverb and get kind of muddy. And we really don't need to mess with anything else. I'll turn up the mod, which is a frequency modulator on the actual reverb. That just creates like more of a creamy sound on the reverb. Okay, so when we send sounds there. So now I'm going to send, there's certain sound effects I have in here, like my arpeggio. So I'm going to go sound by sound here. It's a little hard to see, so let me drag this out. So we're going to find the sound, in this case, the arpeggio. We're going to send a duplicate of the arpeggio by left clicking on here and then left clicking where it says reverb, and use this knob to determine how much of the duplicate is sent over to the reverb. So I'm going to send a lot and see how we create that shimmery sound. So here's the original sound. It already has reverb on it, but I want a long tail reverb. So here's with the long tail reverb. Okay, so see, it's a big spread of sound. So because it's so big, we're going to turn down the mix level so it doesn't take out the original sound. So we're going to do this for any sound that kind of needs a little Travis Scottification. So all my arpeggios and rhythms. But again, too much reverb can be a bad thing. And notice I'm not sending all of the melody group over to the reverb. Let me go all the way back. So again, to ungroup, to unmute, hit Alt, right click to unmute all your sounds. I don't think the organ needs reverb. The choir could use some. This little pluck sound. One of these could use reverb. Okay, so now we're just making stuff fill up on the side the same way we did with the bass and the kick. I have a sound in the center and I want it on the sides. We're using the reverb to fill up some of the dead space on the side. Okay, so I think that's pretty much. Now I have like a couple sound effects in here. We're going to send it to the reverb. I think I put them towards the end. Here we go. Okay, so because I want a lot of that to go through the reverb. Now people tend to forget that you can EQ your reverb. There's a lot of resonance at a certain frequency. And what I'm going to do is use an EQ to boost in my reverb to figure out where does the sound build up too much energy? Like where is it too dense? And my ear, says around 600 or 700. So we're going to cut this about 3 dB, 6 dB. I'll cut it 6 dB in this case, which is a safe amount. So now I can push sounds through the reverb without it feeling like it's too loud or too like aggressive, I'll say. So now it feels smoother. Okay, let's open up. So notice I didn't move my melody fader. This is still negative 11 dB. And most people, they would try to have their melody scream at everything. Now it does give it a lot more feel. So now I'm debating, should I turn it up 10 more dB? But keep in mind now we can't add the vocal, which is going to eat up a lot more space. So let's just get a feel on the melody, how low we should turn it down. Okay, so that needs to be turned down. That's for sure. So instead of turning down the entire melody, let's turn down that. Now, because that melody is more of a group unison, I'm going to create another mixer channel. Let's call this, let's call it like Topline group. I'm going to make this its own color just so I know what it is. We're going to hit Alt left to move this around. So when that part comes in, we're going to group all those sounds to this one track. So all these 3 sounds right here, we're actually going to right click, route it to the subgroup first, and then the subgroup is going to be routed to the melody group. So what I want to do on this subgroup is add different effects like compressors, sound goodizer. Let's go with the sound goodizer. This is basically kind of like OTT in a way, the sound goodizer. So we're grouping them together. Now I can turn them down as a fader as opposed to doing each one. So let's turn it down. And then what do I like about the sound? I do like the high end. But I wish it was muffled. So I like mode B because it muffles some of that high end a little bit. It does feel a little plasticky. So what we can do to edit this is find that plasticky zone. Usually 200 to 400 hertz has that plasticky zone. So let's figure out where this sounds plasticky. And it's right at the 500. Let's cut that frequency. There's another like area in the high mids probably. Right there at 1300 sounds plasticky. So let's cut that out. We got to be careful not to cut the entire track. It could use a lot more compression. Also, I'm debating if I like the high end, but let's add a fruity compressor here. Fruity limiter on compressor mode. Turn that threshold down. Turn that ratio pretty high. I'm thinking 10 to 1 on this. Really squash this. Let's pull up the attack just a little bit. Getting rid of some of the dynamic of that sound, but I think the sound itself just needs to be shaved down just a little bit with the parametric EQ tune. It's just a little too bright. And then we could add a free chorus. just to detune it. That already is detuned, so let's see how far we can push this. Actually, a better plugin for this would be Hyper Chorus, a new FL Studio plugin. We just have too much signal coming in and it's already detuned. Let's just find out. Now I'm rebalancing the group because some of the lower frequencies were a little too heavy. Okay, so now I'm prioritizing the low mid so that the sound isn't so bitey. Let's get rid of the compressor. Thinking we can sit here all day and try to tweak every little thing about it, but it needs something to give it that. Really, that comes down to sound selection more than anything. We're trying to make a sound cooler. We don't want to get caught up on that. Let's keep moving. So now let's hear everything. So the melody group sounds good so far. The only thing that stood out was that 3-line section where it got loud. So we just turned it down. So now I'm just going to ask myself, where does the melody get too loud? And if it does, we could just turn it down. Individually, I mean. Now I'm going to work on the master track. Now, because we already did the boost, we were hearing the final sound earlier. So now we make different decisions throughout the mix. So this is why the beat kind of already sounded finished. Now, the only plugin I'm going to add in here is the Fruity Wave Shaper. Fruity, where you at, Wave Shaper? We're going to do a convex curvature here. It's going to basically boost the volume, and let's add the mix level at 50%, oversampling mode on 4x, and then let's mess with the preamp. I'm just going to turn down some of the sound effects. Now you can hear that crunch in the 808. So the game at this point, you can even hear it in my voice. It sounds all crunchy. So that's because the wave shaper is changing the harmonics. So if I push the preamp going into it with the mix level up, you're going to get more crunch. So to compensate for the volume that just goes up, we're going to turn the post level down. So it's a constant balancing act of how much we push the preamp versus how far we turn down the post gain. So that's what you're going to see me be. That's what you'll see me doing here. So because I didn't want to push the 808 that hard, we're going to add a parametric EQ2 after the wave shaper to add more volume going into the final soft clipper. So that way we're not going on the 808, making it sound super aggressive. Let's A/B the final master channel. Here's before. Here's after. I don't know if these buttons do much, but I'm hearing like a subtle difference. It could be just my brain, but I'm pretty sure the high quality did something. But I don't know what these buttons do here. All right, let's do it before. Now this time we're going to do all channels, including the master. So here's before all of the plugins. Now this still has some of the stereo imaging. I can't turn that off. Some of the leveling's still there, but this is before the plugins. That kick sounds so much different. This sounds like a bunch of sounds. Now let's turn the plugins on. All right, so as you guys saw, we didn't just slam everything through a soft clipper, okay? So you guys will get these project files for free. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio. If you like this video, let me know what you want help with next in the comments below. I'll try to make those videos. Subscribe if you're new, like the video, share with a friend. Peace out, guys.